Alert rings. Lin Rui quickly sat up from the bed and put on clothes almost like a conditioned reflex. Then he folded his quilt into tofu cubes as quickly as possible. After doing all this, he suddenly realized that he didn't need to get up so early at all. There is no need to fold the quilt on the bed into square tofu cubes. Because he has already retired from the military. And he realizes it every day, after doing it all. Yes, I have come back. Returning to the city where he had been separated for several years, he was born here, studied here, and met the girl he first liked here. Makes it all seem a little unfamiliar now. Although, he only left for 2 years. Lin Rui shook his head, as if to shake off the chaotic thoughts from his mind. He's tired enough. My mother passed away early, and my father passed away last year because of an accident. He was left with a pile of unpaid debts and an elderly grandfather. And he had just returned home from the military. It's time to go out and look for a job. Lin Rui sighed, took out his old suit from the closet and put it on his body, but he always felt that the open neckline had no discipline buttons, and he felt uncomfortable. After he packed up, he pushed open the door and walked out, but a few acquaintances approached him slightly stunned. Uncle Zhang, you are Xia Rui, originally you just came back, so I'm too embarrassed to come to you about this matter. However, these is from your father. Uncle Zhang's expression was a little embarrassed. After all, he was a friend of Lin Rui's father. But the others were not so polite. They were complaining directly, intentionally or unintentionally expressing that their family was financially poor, and the indirect meaning was to ask Lin Rui to repay the money as soon as possible. Lin Rui was silent for a while, then nodded, I understand, I know your intentions, but now I really don't have any money. Even if you block the door and don't let me out, I still don't have the money to pay you back. Why don't you ask me to go out to find a job? As long as I have a job, I will find a way to repay your money slowly. The only thing I am worth now is this house. Even if it is sold, it is not worth much, and where do we live? Several people at the door became quiet, and although they were a little reluctant, they let Lin Rui go out. They all know the current situation of the Lin family. Thank you. Lin Rui nodded. No one likes creditors, but Lin Rui doesn't hate them either. They are just ordinary people who want to get back what originally belonged to them, that's all. What's more, many of them are still friends of their father. They helped the Lin family when their father's business failed. Lin Rui knew that he owed them not only money, but also favors. But whoever it is, encountering such a thing in the morning is always uncomfortable. Lin Rui sorted out his clothes and tried to adjust his mentality. He's going for an interview today, and he doesn't want to be in a bad mood. Taking a deep breath of the chilly morning air, smiling hard, I walked out of this alley. He is going to interview with a security company. Being a security guard doesn't sound like a good job. But finding a job is not an easy task. It was good to hear back from the resumes he sent out, and most of them seemed to sink into the sea, so Lin Rui thought he should give it a try. He found the company according to the address. In the office building where the company is located, Lin Rui found the person responsible for interviewing him. It seems that there is no one else, and it seems that there are not many applicants. Lin Rui shook his head secretly, but he still walked into the office patiently. The person in charge of interviewing him was a middle-aged man in his 40s who was a little fat. My surname is Wang, you can just call me Director Wang. The middle-aged man flipped through the resume on the table and said to Lin Rui, sit down, Lin Rui, I have learned about your situation, in terms of height and image. No problem. It should be suitable for our work. But I have some details to know. You are a veteran, discharged this year. Yes. Lin Rui nodded. I noticed that your service record is very good, and you have received several awards. So what army did you serve in? Director Wang said casually. Lin Rui hesitated for a moment and said, Army, Everything else is on my discharge certificate. Director Wang glanced at him and said with a slight smile, just ask casually, don't be nervous. I know that the army has secrecy regulations, and some things can't be said casually, so just tell me what your specialties are. Lin Rui nodded, small weapon shooting, fighting, reconnaissance and measurement, individual infiltration and reverse osmosis operations, and a little bit of blasting. Director Wang was stunned for a long time, and suddenly couldn't help laughing. I'm sorry, I didn't make it clear, I didn't mean military expertise. You know this is a peaceful era, and we are just a security company, we have no enemies, only a few at most competitors in the same industry. Although the market is like a battlefield, we don't need you to sneak into the other company to engage in infiltration and blasting activities. I just want to ask if you have any other specialties. Everyone else in the office also laughed, feeling that this young man is very interesting. This. Lin Rui also felt a little embarrassed, smiled, and said, no more. Director Wang nodded and said, you said on your resume that you are looking for a job with a salary of around 3,000 a month, and preferably night shift. Why is that? Because I need money, and I have patients at home. If I work night shifts, it is convenient to take care of the patients. Lin Rui said calmly. Director Wang nodded and said, but obviously we can't satisfy these 2 points. For general security guards, the monthly salary we can provide is between 12,000 and 1,500, and we adopt a rotation system. Night shift. Lin Rui was silent for a while. This salary is indeed very low. The key is that his grandfather is ill and needs to be taken care of. If you are not at home during the day, something will happen. However, he was still unwilling to say, is there no other position? Your security company provides security services, don't you need night shift staff? Director Wang shook his head and said, we do provide professional security services for many customers, but, to put it bluntly, that's not what customers want. I can tell you frankly that most of the time they just need a tall, strong-looking person who looks very energetic. The young man stands at the door and reflects the following image. Even if you are a special soldier who has experienced hundreds of battles, it is of no use to us. We don't need you to have any great abilities, we only need a gatekeeper. You can stand upright at the door and make people feel safe. Director Wang said with a wry smile, given the nature of this job, it's obviously impossible for you to want a higher salary and free time arrangement, so I can only say sorry. Lin Rui nodded silently, put away his resume and several award certificates, turned around and walked out the door. This was the first time he ran into a wall, and he couldn't remember clearly. It seems that no matter what, the end result is the same, and he still hasn't found a job. After Lin Rui walked out the door, he couldn't help feeling agitated for a while, and looked at his resume and several awards in the army. He couldn't help laughing bitterly, knowing this earlier, it was better to go to the logistics unit to raise pigs in the army. Maybe after I come back now, I can make a fortune by raising pigs. Lin Rui looked at the certificates of military training and competition awards in his hand, and smiled bitterly. While walking past a trash can, I threw those stacks of paper into it. For a split second, he even felt a faint pain in his heart, because it seemed like he had left everything behind him. Don't you think it's a bit of a pity? Someone behind him said slowly. It's nothing to regret, it's just some waste paper. Lin Rui said calmly. However, I can see that you have worked hard for these waste papers. The person behind him said slowly. Lin Rui then turned around and looked carefully at the man behind him. This is a person who looks to be in his 40s, but he looks very handsome. It is strange that although this person is handsome, his facial expression is a bit rigid. I don't know you. Lin Rui frowned. I know you, Lin Rui. In fact, I have been following behind you just now, but you didn't notice it. It can be seen that you have something on your mind, and you must be disappointed if you didn't get this job, even a kind of frustration. feeling. The handsome middle-aged man on the opposite side smiled slightly. It's still early to go back, and it's not too late to find a job again. If that's the case, why don't you talk to me? I really have no interest in talking. Lin Rui shook his head and said. He is in a very bad mood right now, and really doesn't want to talk about anything with a stranger. So he turned around and walked away. But just as he turned around, the handsome middle-aged man stepped up quickly, grabbed Lin Rui's sleeve with one hand, and at the same time lowered his body and leaned against him, with a speed that could not cover his ears. He threw Lin Rui off his shoulder. The whole movement was simple and quick, the timing was very good, and the force was just right, almost rounding Lin Rui's shoulders. This move is so common that it is called a shoulder throw in Chinese wrestling, and a back throw in Japanese judo. It seems simple, but it contains the principles of mechanics. If you want to do it so neatly and suddenly, you can't do it without a few years of hard work. In this handsome middle-aged man, he has a pair of equally handsome skills. However, Lin Rui was not thrown to the ground. Just when he was lifted up and his body's center of gravity was lost, he suddenly turned slightly in the air and supported the ground with one hand, but his leg kicked the opponent's head by the tendency of falling. This is completely based on an instinctive reaction, and the action is made almost without any thought, suddenly and covertly. However, the middle-aged man seemed to have expected this move for a long time. He bent his elbow and raised it to block his ear, and he just blocked Lin Rui's foot. However, Lin Rui also took this opportunity to stand up, looking at the middle-aged man and said sharply, "What do you want to do? Try your skills." The middle-aged man said with a smile, "You can't learn this kung fu in the army. Military fighting is about grabbing and fighting, short and fast. There are very few traditional martial arts like you. Do you want to poke your legs or poke your feet?" Lin Rui looked at him, frowned and said, "What does this have to do with you? I'm in a bad mood today, and the shot is not serious. Besides, you are too old, and I can't afford to pay for the medical bills." He said turn around and leave. However, the next sentence of the handsome middle-aged man stopped him again. "I know you're looking for a job, maybe I can offer you a job." The handsome middle-aged man behind him said calmly. Lin Rui paused for a while, then turned around and said, "What kind of work?" "It's similar in nature to the one you applied for just now, but it seems to be a little more challenging, and of course the pay is higher. This is a fair world, and high risk leads to high reward. How about it, are you interested?" The middle-aged man smiled slightly. Lin Rui frowned. "It's also a security company. Military security company to be exact." The middle-aged man said calmly, "My car is at the intersection. If you don't mind, let's find a place to talk. Maybe, you will be interested in the position I offer." A black car stopped at the intersection. Lin Rui hesitated for a while, but got into the car with this man. After getting in the car, the man drove Lin Rui straight to an office building in the city. "Sit down," the middle-aged man said calmly. Lin Rui nodded. He glanced at this unfamiliar place, hesitated but sat down anyway. "Introduce myself. My surname is Mi. You can call me Mr. Mi. Although you never asked questions on the way, I know you must be thinking about the difference between our company and ordinary security companies." The middle-aged man smiled. Lin Rui was silent for a while and said, "What's the difference?" "First of all, I can tell you that we are an overseas private company. High benefits, high salary, high efficiency, but also a high-risk industry." Mr. Mi looked at Lin Rui and said, "How dangerous is it?" Lin Rui frowned. "Injury, or even death, or even worse than these, is being captured on the battlefield," Mr. Mi said lightly. Lin Rui had some doubts about his ears. He stood up and said, "Battlefield? Captured? Who are you?" "The full name of our company is Morningstar Military Consulting Company, or SUM for short. I can provide you with an employment contract. The salary is absolutely beyond your imagination, and of course the risks are beyond your imagination. Mr. Mi smiled slightly. Our company's business is very large, and in the past 10 years, we can be found in all hotspots in the world. Simply put, we are employed by any country and perform military missions in any region. Lin Rui frowned. You mean a mercenary company? Some people say that, but such words are obviously very unprofessional. We are a professional military consulting company, so I prefer to call myself a military security employee. Mr. Mi smiled. Where there are people, there is war. If there is war, there will be business, and we are such people. The current world has stabilized, and large-scale wars similar to World War II are unlikely to occur, but small-scale local conflicts have never ceased. This ensures that our business will never stop. It never stopped. Lin Rui shook his head and said, perhaps it is the existence of people like you that leads to the constant conflict in this world. I'm not interested. Young man, you are completely wrong. There is conflict in this world, it is about people, there are interests. People are fighting for their own interests. Even without us, there will still be wars. We just use our professional skills and mix in the war. People who eat food. Mr. Mi smiled slightly. I know, you are desperately short of money right now. Trust me, it's just a job. It's not fundamentally different from working elsewhere. I don't believe you. Lin Rui shook his head. I know trust can't be built in a day, but you can totally trust me. Because like you, I used to be a veteran. Mr. Mi smiled calmly. You used to be a soldier, and you should know that the person you can trust the most is your comrade. You can trust that person with your back, because you know he also trusts you. You can only survive if you trust each other. It's your comrade in arms. No, I can't leave here, there are still patients at home. Lin Rui shook his head. I know, in fact, you may not believe it. I have investigated you, and your grandfather is in poor health and suffers from Alzheimer's. And your own financial situation is very poor, and you can't support him well. But you only need to sign for this contract of mine, I can immediately pay you a contract fee. Not only can you repay all the debts, but you can also hire professional nursing staff to take care of him. Mr. Mi said calmly. Do you know how much debt I owe? Lin Rui said with a wry smile. A total of about 300,000 yuan is owed by your father during his lifetime. Mr. Mi smiled lightly. It seems that you do not understand the meaning of this job. Let me give an example. During the Gulf War, a certain employee of our company, these military personnel are paid $10,000 a day. Like I said, high risk deserves high reward. Lin Rui was stunned. He was silent for a while and said, is what you said true? I stopped you on the street and dragged you here. After talking to you so much, you wouldn't think I was teasing you, would you? Mr. Mi sighed. I really look like such a boring person. Lin Rui looked at him suspiciously, but did not speak. Mr. Mi nodded and said, it seems that you still don't trust me. Then, maybe this can make you see that what I said is not a joke. He slowly rolled up his left sleeve with his right hand, so that Lin Rui could see clearly. His left hand is completely a fake hand. Mr. Mi laughed at himself. This hand was lost in the Kosovo War, a booby trap installed on the door. The Soviet-style MC3 multi-purpose booby-trapped mine not only blew off this hand, but also mine. Half of the face. The face you see now is the result of plastic surgery. So I don't think there is anything wrong with being paid a little bit more on the front lines. Lin Rui stared blankly at the fake hand he put on the table, and then looked at his handsome but obviously unnatural face, and suddenly an inexplicable chill surged in his heart. I hope I didn't scare you. Mr. Mi slowly put the prosthetic hand back on his forearm. But then again, if you are scared like this, it proves that I didn't find the right person. I wasn't intimidated, but you still found the wrong person. Thank you for your kindness, but I'm not ready to accept your job. Lin Rui said after a while of silence. Mr. Mi nodded and said, you know, although we met for the first time, I know a young man like you. Every year, many young people like you return home from the army, and they will change in the face of this world. You are a little confused and don't know where your future is. Joining the army at this age means that you have no high education and are at a disadvantage in the cruel competition for career choices. You have courage, but you don't know where to use your courage. You can only wait over time, the courage in your hearts will slowly be smoothed out until the utter ignorance of everyone. Life is a war, but no matter how strong a soldier is, he will lose to time. I can't leave my home, my grandfather needs me. Lin Rui said with some difficulty. But what can you give him by staying with him? You can't give him anything, and he doesn't even recognize who you are. You're so indebted, you're going to sell your house to pay off your debt and support him with a meager job. It's not easy, let alone give him good care. The Chinese tradition emphasizes filial piety. Do you think this is considered filial piety? People are destined to bear a lot of responsibilities in the world. You are obliged to join the army and be loyal to the country, right? Should you also be filial to your family? Mr. Mi said calmly, if you think what I said makes sense, you might as well have a look at this contract. After speaking, he pushed a few pieces of paper in front of Lin Rui. All the relevant terms are here. I don't want to lie to you, but I don't want you to refuse without thinking. This is a position and an opportunity for you. This contract only takes 6 years to complete, and as long as you get through those 6 years, everything will be the same. Lin Rui looked at Mr. Mi's hand and said lightly, how about you? Me? Mr. Mi didn't seem to understand what he was talking about. Are you still the same? Lin Rui said calmly, you're right, time is enough to beat anyone. After a few years, no one will be the same. It's hard for me to imagine that after 6 years a mercenary career, what will I become? Yes, you don't know. But you do know that 6 years of ordinary, boring, low-paying work will turn you into something. Ask yourself, is this what you want? Mr. Mi read he said, you are a warrior, and only the battlefield is your value. So you'd better consider this issue seriously. Lin Rui looked at the contract. As Mr. Mi said, the contract was generous enough. Not only is the weekly salary very high, it even stipulates that if he dies unexpectedly, his family can also get a huge amount of pension. Lin Rui frowned, however, what do the terms of the unfinished contract written on it mean? Once you sign the contract, we will give you a training period of more than 1 year. If you can't survive the training within this more than 1 year, it can only be regarded as the contract has not been fulfilled. We have the right to unilaterally terminate the contract. Of course, you can only there will be some very little compensation. We are a commercial company, and we invest in you to make money in you. You should be able to understand this. Mr. Mi spread his hands. Training. Lin Rui frowned. Of course, to put you on the battlefield now is to die. Don't look at your training, but believe me, the training you have received is not enough to make you survive on the cruel battlefield. Once you sign up, then you are the property of the company. You are only useful to the company if you are alive. We will do our best to ensure this. Mr. Mi shrugged. But why me? Lin Rui frowned. I'm just an ordinary veteran, not some special forces elite or military expert. Why did you find me? Have you ever thought that the 2 types of people you mentioned will be recruited by me? Mr. Mi said calmly, and I used to be a Chinese soldier like you. Even if I no longer fight for my country, don't dig into the corners of your own country. All I need are veterans who don't look conspicuous, but have the potential to develop. What kind of person do you think I am? The kind of person who works for money. Lin Rui looked at Mr. Mi and said. You are a fighter. A fighter can only be considered a true fighter on the battlefield. Mr. Mi said lightly, actually, we have other considerations in choosing you. Your social relationship is simple, and you have no relatives except your grandfather. Even if something really happened, no one will hold it accountable. The accident you're talking about, is it crippled like you, or did you just die? Lin Rui looked at Mr. Mi and asked. Everything is possible. Mr. Mi said calmly, but don't worry, even if you die unexpectedly, we will be responsible to the end. If you die on the battlefield, the company will put a sum of money into your account, enough for your grandfather. Retirement. If you live to complete our contract, of course everyone will be happy. Lin Rui was silent for a long time before standing up slowly. He put away the contract on the table, looked at Mr. Mi and said, I need to think about it again. This is a decision that can affect your destiny, and I hope you think about it carefully. But don't take it too long, you know the opportunity is fleeting. If you miss it, it will never come again. I am looking forward to our fellowship. Mr. Mi smiled at Lin Rui and handed him a business card. Think about it, call me. Lin Rui didn't say anything, just took the contract and left quietly. Mr. Mi stood at the window and watched Lin Rui's lonely back downstairs drifting away, his eyes were as calm as a pool of stagnant water. He rarely misreads people, and he already knows that this young man will take his word for it, and even take the job. He silently took out a cigarette, but didn't smoke it, just put it in front of his nose and smelled it. Someone approached the office. The person who came was probably in their 30s, with short hair and a black coat. He looked at Mr. Mi with a slight smile and said, You seem to be very concerned about this young man. Is there anything special about him? Everyone is special. Although they have many similarities, in a strict sense, everyone is unique. You are special, and he is no exception. Mr. Mi didn't look back, it seemed to know who the person who asked him was. Hey, what you said seems to be deliberately covering up something. The man smiled, walked to his side, took out a lighter and lit it up. Mr. Mi sighed, blew out the flame, shook his head and said, I quit. Am I right? Michelle, the legendary figure in the company, the silver wolf in the mercenary world, has quit smoking. This world is crazy. It seems that you deliberately want to make a clean break with your previous life. That person shrugged. One day, you will also step down like me, walk into the management of the company, and have a new life. There is no sweaty camouflage uniform, no blood or even the smell of gunpowder, but instead suits, offices, coffee cups. In order to survive, people must integrate into the environment. This is the environment I have to face now. Mr. Mi said calmly and authentically. Let's talk about it when I live until that day. The man in the black coat smiled and said. Zhao Jianfei, how is the thing I asked you to do? Michelle looked at the man. The man in the black coat nodded and said, It's done, a total of 15 new recruits are from all over the country. I have personally inspected and there are many good seedlings. After a month, they will be sent to the training camp. We have a regular contract and a regular overseas labor visa. However, the young man just now doesn't seem to have been determined yet. He's not something you need to worry about. I'm not mistaken, he will come. Michelle said lightly. When Lin Rui returned home, it was past his usual meal time, and he was too late to cook, so he just bought a few steamed buns on the way. After returning home, he went into his grandfather's room. The old man didn't seem to notice that he was back at all, just stared out the window in a daze. Lin Rui walked up to him, picked up the steamed bun and handed it to him. It's dinner, Grandpa. Eat. The old man turned around dully and repeated his words in a mechanical voice. Yes, it's time to eat. Lin Rui smiled and said, the steamed buns were just out of the cage. They were still warm when they were bought, and they are still warm now. You sit and eat slowly, and I'll boil some water. Son, are you back? I don't know if Xia Rui has eaten, or will you send it to him? The old man said tremblingly. He doesn't know Lin Rui anymore, and he has been treating his grandson as a son these days. His memory was a mess, and most of the time it was still stuck in a few years ago. Grandpa, I am Xia Rui. Lin Rui forced a smile. But his heart is full of bitterness. Who would have thought that now this old man, who is not even aware of his consciousness, once won the National Martial Arts Championship. When he was young, with his good fists and feet, ordinary people couldn't get close to him. But now, it is difficult for him to even put his head down and put on his shoes. Grandpa, I went out to look for a job today. Lin Rui looked at his grandfather and whispered, there is a job, but it's a little dangerous. I don't know if I should agree. I don't want to leave you, but I can't give you a job when I'm by your side. What are you? I can't even find a job as a security guard. Forget it, I know you don't understand. His smile was somewhat bitter, but if I agree, I will have money, and you will get better care and maybe pay off some debt. Lin Rui sighed and leaned against the door frame alone, his expression unclear whether it was melancholy or helplessness. He looked back at the contract on the table again. He had to admit that the salary package on the contract was a temptation for him. But he always felt a little uneasy. After agreeing to the job, maybe one day he will die in Africa, the Middle East, or somewhere he can't even name himself. To die without dignity, to be trampled on, like a dog. But the words of Mr. Me still echoed in his ears, like an inescapable spell. Finally, he sat down, looked at the contract carefully, and then signed his name on the contract. After doing all this, Lin Rui suddenly seemed to feel empty. He looked back at his grandfather again, who was still in a daze, mumbling something unconsciously. Lin Rui walked over to him and covered his knees with a blanket. Looking at his grandfather's aged face, he suddenly felt the urge to cry. I will come back, alive. 5 or 6 years is not too long, everything will be fine, trust me. Lin Rui looked at his grandfather and said calmly. Lin Rui called Mr. Me and said in a low voice, is that Mr. Me? You are Lin Rui, I can hear your voice. How is it, what is the result of the consideration? Mr. Me said lightly, if you think about it, I hope you will come tomorrow and bring relevant documents. In addition, I know that you need money, so I have prepared a sum for you as an advance payment from the company to you. As for your grandpa, I have also contacted a good nursing institution, and they are very happy to accept it. The cost has been paid once, it took 2 years to pay for sex. Of course, the follow-up costs are up to you. Thank you. However, what kind of documents do I need? Lin Rui frowned. Identity proof, because you have to go abroad, you must also go through the passport and other related procedures. Don't worry about this, we will handle it. Mr. Me said calmly, if you have already decided, then come to me tomorrow morning. Lin Rui was silent for a while and said, okay. The next day, he went to Mr. Me's office again. However, this time was different from last time. Not only Mr. Me, but also a middle-aged man in a black coat with a flat head was in the office. Seeing Lin Rui coming in, Mr. Me smiled slightly, just come. Let me introduce, this is Zhao Jianfei, a person from the company's training department. He will be in charge of the specific work and daily training of you guys. Next, during the 1.5 years of training, you will all deal with each other. Zhao Jianfei smiled indifferently, that's right. Welcome, young man. Lin Rui shook hands with him, feeling that his hand was very strong and full of calluses. Not the kind of ordinary work, but a gun cocoon. Generally speaking, calluses are most likely to form at the junction of the fingers and the palm, and the calluses produced by the gun are grown on the hand, close to the tiger's mouth. Although Zhao Jianfei always had a smile on his face, it always gave him a sense of danger. Zhao Jianfei seemed to sense Lin Rui's strangeness, and smiled slightly, don't be surprised, people like us are more or less skilled workers. By the way, you are also working abroad as a technician. You can't say you directly. Are you going abroad to be a mercenary? Sit down, Lin Rui. Lin Rui nodded and sat down. Zhao Jianfei glanced at him and said calmly, "From now until departure, you have a month to prepare. When you leave, try not to worry about anything. Don't bring any items that may represent your personal information. What you need everything, the company will provide." "Why?" Lin Rui frowned. "Okay, my first advice to you is not to ask why." Zhao Jianfei looked at Lin Rui and said calmly, "Don't ask now, and don't ask in the next 5 years. Remember, we are technicians. Blue-collar workers, not decision-makers. But I can answer your question, because you are going abroad as a skilled worker. When the training camp is over, you will die. Of course, it is only legal death. We will issue official accident report stating that you died in an industrial accident abroad. Why do you want to do this?" Lin Rui frowned. "In order to relieve your worries. Because at that time you will be on the battlefield, in various hot spots around the world, and in various complex environments. You never want to involve your family because of your actions. And everything you carry may represent items with your personal information will be an implicit threat." Zhao Jianfei said with a smile. "Where are we going to receive training?" Lin Rui asked, looking at this strange and dangerous man. Zhao Jianfei said calmly, "Frozen Hell." Half a month later, when Lin Rui set foot on this unfamiliar land, he realized what Zhao Jianfei said about the Frozen Hell. A dozen young people, including Lin Rui, came to the forests of West Siberia in the name of exporting labor services. Their public identities are mining exploration technicians, but in fact they are mercenaries. Siberia is famous for its severe cold, and the training camp of the Morning Star Military Security Company is located in this vast forest. It was a severe winter, and the low temperature of -40 to 50 degrees almost froze people's minds. From the time they got off the plane to training camp, they huddled together in a battered truck to keep each other warm. It wasn't until Zhao Jianfei let them get off that Lin Rui and the others lifted the tarpaulin and got off the back of the truck. "We're here," Zhao Jianfei said coldly, "the base is in front. Everyone should get off the station. White Bear, count the number of people." The man Zhao Jianfei called a white bear was a big Russian man with blonde hair and blue eyes, nearly 2 meters tall, and his burly muscles almost made his camouflage suit look like a tights. He counted the number of people, nodded and said there was no problem. "Everyone is paying attention, take off all your clothes." Zhao Jianfei ordered coldly. "What?" Everyone immediately fried. "Why? With this low temperature, you want to kill people? You have 2 choices, either take off all your clothes and follow me, or stay here and freeze to death. I have no opinion." Zhao Jianfei said with a cold smile, "Although you have all been investigated before coming here. But drive carefully. Nian Chuan, I don't want any of you to secretly bring a GPS locator or a mess of mobile phones to expose the location of the base. Don't worry, run a few kilometers naked and you won't freeze to death. You have 5 minutes time, do as I say, now, now. Try to strip yourself." A young man in the crowd shouted. Before he could finish his second sentence, he was strangled with one hand by the Russian big man White Bear. He lifted it off the ground like he was picking up a chicken. This person is not too small, but in front of White Bear, he almost looks like a child who has no strength to fight back, and he can't do anything about dancing in the air. "Okay, let him go." Zhao Jianfei smiled slightly. "It seems that this is a guy with courage, but in our business, we never lack courage, but lack of brains. People with brains should know what to do. What should not be done. What can be said, what can't be said. Well, White Bear, you are about to strangle him." The big Russian man threw the man to the ground with an indifferent expression. The man knelt on the snow, touched his throat, and gasped heavily. Just now, the White Bear almost strangled him to death. Lin Rui saw it very clearly. The action of this white bear was quick and accurate. As long as the strength of his hand was stronger, he would definitely crush his throat on the spot without making a sound. It's pure battlefield fighting techniques, not too fancy, and straightforward, focusing on one-hit fatalities. Even Lin Rui had been practicing martial arts for many years, but he couldn't help but feel a little chill. You only have 4 minutes left. Zhao Jianfei looked at his watch calmly. Everyone gave in and took off their clothes one after another. Even the man lying on the ground started to take off his clothes after glaring at Zhao Jianfei. Lin Rui never said a word from beginning to end, and he did what others did. White Bear impassively doused the clothes with spare gasoline from the car, and set them on fire. Very good. Zhao Jianfei showed his signature smile when he looked at the group of young people who were shivering in the low temperature of -40 to 50 degrees. Follow me. By the way, as a friendly reminder, if you don't want to be disabled, after walking for a while, rub your feet with your hands. I don't want to bring you to the base, and someone will be amputated due to low temperature frostbite. Watching a group of naked men running in the snow, the white bear laughed in the back. They have no way not to run. Under such a low temperature, if they don't allow their bodies to fully exercise, they will freeze at any time. The entrance to the base is a cave, and it seems that the entire training base is built in the belly of the mountain. There are strict security measures at the entrance. In addition to the sentry, Lin Rui even found that there are several hidden firepower points in the distance. The shooting range is enough to cover the entire entrance without leaving any dead ends. It looks like a military fortress. Zhao Jianfei brought these people in, and everyone was checked again before entering to ensure that they did not bring any electronic equipment. But soon they all received their own clothes. Lin Rui took it in his hand and looked at it, frowning slightly. Because these clothes are like standard military uniforms, but it is impossible to tell what country and arms they belong to. You have 5 minutes to sort things out, then run to the hall to meet. I don't like being late. Zhao Jianfei said coldly. This time everyone was silent, and no one dared to question any of his words. After a few minutes, they packed up and went to the outside hall to gather. This base in the middle of the mountain is very large and has several floors. As far as some facilities are concerned, Lin Rui feels that it should not be newly built, at least for decades. No matter what it is, it reveals a strong taste of the former Soviet military base. No matter what equipment it is a bulky, but durable type. Zhao Jianfei looked at the group of newcomers who came for training, and said indifferently, "Welcome to Frozen Hell. I know that most of you are veterans with excellent service records. So I will take the basic discipline of the army. I don't want to emphasize it to you anymore. There is only one word I want to emphasize: obey, obey, or obedience. Because the company calls you and trains you. Not for you to go to war to die, but for you face the most dangerous enemies in the most dangerous places and carry out highly dangerous military missions." Everyone looked at Zhao Jianfei in silence, and no one spoke. Lin Rui just watched calmly. Zhao Jianfei nodded and said, "Although you have learned to keep silent, I know that some of you are not convinced." "Wrong. You are not very good. If you put you on the battlefield, basically no one will survive, let alone complete the task. To put it bluntly, you are a group of soft eggs who will be crushed at any time. And the reason why I stand here, to change that. For the next year and a half, you have to go through all kinds of training until you become a journeyman." Zhao Jianfei paced a few steps and said indifferently, "Want to know what a skilled worker looks like? Bai Xiong, come and show them." White Bear grinned and took out a rifle from behind. Lin Rui glanced at the gun, and it felt a lot like an old-fashioned domestic rifle, Type 56, but it seemed a little different. However, Lin Rui also knows that the Type 56 semi-automatic rifle is an imitation of the Soviet semi-automatic rifle. It seems that this gun should be the famous Soviet-style AK-47, the real Kalashnikov assault rifle. Bai Xiong skillfully picked up the gun, disassembled and disassembled it quickly, disassembled a gun cleanly, and quickly assembled it again. It is not difficult to disassemble and install firearms, and almost trained soldiers can disassemble and install firearms quickly. But Lin Rui has never seen anything like White Bear, because ordinary disassembly and assembly of firearms are done on the desktop. Remove all firearm parts and put them away according to the rules. Clean the barrel and install it in order. But Bai Xiong is not like this at all. All his disassembly and assembly work is done with his hands. The parts that were removed from each part were caught between his fingers, but the magazine was held in his mouth. Not only that, he was still doing various tactical evasion moves. Rolling forward, leaping forward, bending to avoid, at the same time, his hands never stopped disassembling and assembling for a moment, and his footsteps did not stop during the whole process. Lin Rui believed that even if the White Bear was holding a bunch of gun parts, after a few tactical actions, the gun was already assembled and ready to shoot. This group of mercenary newcomers almost all looked straight. In such a short dozens of seconds, the disassembly and assembly of firearms must be completed in various tactical actions. To be done. God knows how this stout Russian hunk developed such dexterous hands. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Have you seen it? This is a skilled worker. Zhao Jianfei said to Bai Xiong slightly sarcastically, by the way, Bai Xiong, your hand speed is slower than before. White Bear muttered in a low voice, as if a little annoyed. Zhao Jianfei turned his head to look at the group of newcomers and said, with the same equipment, any one of you encountering a White Bear on the battlefield will only have one ending. That is to be killed by him. Even many of you, if you don't have time to see his face clearly, he will be completely obliterated by him. And to be honest, he is no longer at his peak. That's why he is here, not on the battlefield. I say this, I don't know if you do not believe. I don't believe it. Someone in the crowd whispered. Who? Zhao Jianfei's eyes moved, stand out. The crowd automatically moved away, and Lin Rui stood there calmly. It's you. Zhao Jianfei frowned slightly, what do you object to my words? Not everyone is not his opponent. If I face him, the chance of winning should be 50%. Lin Rui said calmly. Zhao Jianfei frowned, what does 50% mean? I'll kill him, or I'll kill him. Lin Rui looked at the White Bear and said. Oh? Are you sure? Zhao Jianfei said deliberately. Lin Rui shook his head, I won't say that, because a 50% certainty is not absolute certainty. He is big enough, and his speed is not slow. He has advantages in close combat, and he seems to be very skilled with firearms. However, he is big. It means that the target is large and the probability of being hit is high. He may be suitable for assault operations, but it is not conducive to stealth operations. So there is never an absolute advantage on the battlefield. Zhao Jianfei smiled at Bai Xiong and said, it seems that some people are not convinced about you. Bai Xiong, teach him how to behave. Bai Xiong put down the gun in his hand and walked up with a grin. The people around quickly dispersed, and Lin Rui, who was 1.78 meters tall, could only look up in front of this Russian giant. But there was no fear in his eyes, he just said calmly, I'm just talking about things, and there's nothing to be dissatisfied with. But Bai Xiong didn't say a word. This big man with dangerous and explosive muscles raised his hand and punched Lin Rui in the chest. His punches are quick and clean, and he's very particular about where he hits. As long as this punch is enough to hit Lin Rui's heart and lungs, causing a brief shock. Lin Rui's movements were not slow. Almost when Bai Xiong's shoulders moved, he moved his steps and retreated at the same time. While avoiding this punch, a swift and powerful leg kicked the White Bear's waist and abdomen. He was trained in strict martial arts and was very accurate in his distance and timing. It's just that his leg only made Bai Xiong's body pause for a moment. Bai Xiong was stunned for a moment, then turned around angrily, and punched Lin Rui's face with a backhand. Lin Rui knew that the white bear was extremely powerful, so he didn't dare to block forcibly, so he had to dodge backwards. After Bai Xiong forced Lin Rui back, he looked down at the footprints on his abdomen. It's Chinese Kung Fu again. Bai Xiong took off his clothes in a fit of rage, and slammed it to the ground, revealing his steel-like muscles and a chest full of body hair. I can't kill you, little calf. Lin Rui was a little stunned by his northeastern accent of Chinese, and he didn't know where the Russian giant learned Chinese. But thinking about it is also a little relieved. Russia borders the northeastern region of China. This big man is estimated to have learned Chinese there, and by the way, he has also learned the accent of the northeast fellow. Zhao Jianfei smiled aside and said, "Be careful, you angered the white bear." Bai Xiong was really angry, and he didn't know if he was angry with Lin Rui for kicking him, or he had resentment toward Chinese Kung Fu. This tower-like giant rushed up with a roar. There is no room left for the shot. His hand-to-hand combat technique is a pure military combat technique popular in the former Soviet era Special Forces Office, Sistema. This kind of fighting technique originated from the Russian folk, includes two parts, unarmed fighting and equipment fighting. Later, after being absorbed by the Soviet Special Forces, the assassination and anti-assassination techniques were further developed on the original basis in response to military requirements. After analyzing and summarizing the actual combat data of the army, this martial art has been developed to a new height. Modern scientific data makes this ancient martial art more in line with sports mechanics and human physiology, and even has a special breathing method to help relieve the body pain from being attacked. So it is also called Russian Jiu-Jitsu. This white bear seemed to know the truth. Although he was furious, he did not attack blindly. Instead, he stared at Lin Rui's every move, keeping a distance from Lin Rui while looking for opportunities. He understands that his physique doesn't matter even if he takes 2 more hits, but as long as Lin Rui is hit once by himself, he will never have a good life. During the fight, Bai Xiong finally got an opportunity to approach Lin Rui. He grabbed Lin Rui's clothes with both hands, roared wildly, twisted his waist and almost lifted Lin Rui up and fell backwards. This is a German-style rear axle fall in wrestling, grabbing the opponent's waist from behind, and then relying on its own waist strength to hold the opponent tightly and throw it back. Lin Rui fell from being hugged by him to the top, and the whole process was between lightning and flint. Lin Rui knew it was bad as soon as his feet left the ground. Quickly stretch your waist and abdomen, and spread your feet as far back as possible. When he fell, he kept his feet on the ground first, and firmly supported his upper limbs. In an instant, his body bent back into a large arc, avoiding the impact of the back and head landing. And taking this opportunity to bend over and stand up, without any stopping at all, he rolled to the side of the white bear. Bai Xiong had just got up at this time, and Lin Rui's leg was there in an instant, and Lin Rui attacked the outside of Bai Xiong's knee this time. Pa pa pa, a series of rapid kicks. Bai Xiong's knee finally couldn't support it, and it fell to one side. Lin Rui took advantage of his short body to lift his knee and hit his lower jaw. This time he finally brought Bai Xiong down. First, he was in a sinking position because his knee was kicked, and then he was hit by this knee, and his whole body fell backwards. Beautiful! The students onlookers cheered and applauded. Zhao Jianfei also clapped his hands in a slow manner, and said lightly, "It's really beautiful. But it doesn't prove anything if you look good. Do you know the true identity of the white bear?" Lin Rui and everyone looked at him, not knowing what he was going to say. Zhao Jianfei sighed and said, "He is neither a fighting expert, nor a firearms expert, or even a military personnel, but just a chef in this training camp. What he is best at is not fighting but beef soup. So I don't think you've worked so hard to win a cook. What a joy to beat a cook. Come on, white bear, don't look at it. Pack up and go back to cook your meal." Everyone's eyes were dull, looking at the white bear that got up from the ground. "I don't know what to say," This Russian guy with extraordinary skills is not a military personnel, but a chef. Zhao Jianfei said indifferently, Lin Rui, right? You seem to be very good at fighting. But with your skills, you can perform well, but if you want to fight, you will die very quickly. You will only meet the instructor in charge of combat training. Understand what real fighting is. Okay, stop talking nonsense, and stand up. Almost all the trainees are veterans. Hearing this, they immediately stood up neatly. I'll tell you officially. There will be 3 instructors in this training camp. You all know me, Zhao Jianfei. I will teach you tactics, equipment, and language. The other 2 will teach you fighting, reconnaissance, and covert operations. And blasting, sniping. Zhao Jianfei said calmly. Report the instructor, I have a problem. The man who was thrown to the ground by the white bear couldn't help but speak again. What's the problem? Talk about it. Zhao Jianfei frowned. I can understand what you said, but what's the matter with the language you speak? Do we have to learn a foreign language in training here? The man hesitated. I am not very talented in foreign languages, let's talk about it's enough to be able to fight, why learn a foreign language? Because learning a foreign language can save your life, it's as simple as that. On the battlefield you'll fight with other mercenaries, and they're not Chinese. As a result, they told you to hide, but you thought it was an order for a squad to strike. Run out. After that, not only did he die, but he also killed everyone else. What do you think of your tombstone engraved with the words died from illiteracy? Oh, I was wrong, because the team was all killed and no one collected the body, so you don't even have a tombstone, you will just leave it somewhere and slowly rot. Do you still think language is not important? Pig's head. Zhao Jianfei laughed. The man stayed for a while and murmured, but I really can't learn this. It's really a pig's head to say that you are a pig's head. I didn't let you take the English Level 8 test. You only need to learn basic tactical terms for Lao Tzu, and you can understand a few hundred words. Don't go to the battlefield, you can't even tell the difference between the task of rescuing the hostages and the task of beheading. For a year and a half, even if you learn a word every day, you can use a pig's head. Zhao Jianfei waved his hand impatiently. You are quite lucky. The other 2 instructors haven't arrived yet. So if you don't train today, you have half a day of your own time today, and you are fortunate enough to taste the curry beef made by Bai Xiong. But everyone looked at Zhao Jianfei, waiting for him to continue. Zhao Jianfei glanced at them and said indifferently, no one should try to go out. The security guards at the door will shoot and kill all those who try to escape. Yuyuganshu www.yuyuganshu.com does not hesitate. Do stupid things. We're not a regular army, but we have our own rules. It's frozen and anyone training here will not die. But if you survive the training period and get out of here alive, then you'll be real men. The so-called special forces elites from all over the world are as gentle as virgins in front of you. His calm tone and last sentence made people want to laugh, but no one could laugh. Because his sentence has a premise, that is to leave alive. When Lin Rui heard this sentence, his heart suddenly twitched. The training period of Morningstar Military Security Company may not be so easy to spend. He took a deep look at Zhao Jianfei. This man with a smile, but always showing an indifferent attitude towards life and death, must have also experienced the ordeal of this frozen hell. Zhao Jianfei didn't seem interested in saying anything else. He waved his hand and said, okay, let's all go back and get acquainted with the environment. You will spend a year and a half here in the future. Disband. Then the group of mercenary students dispersed one after another and returned to the barracks. Lin Rui discovered that he was actually in the same barracks with the man who was berated by Zhao Jianfei. He nodded to the man, and sat down in the room. Ah, it's you, master. I said you played too well just now, and that tall foreigner was actually beaten by you. It's so fun. The man came over and said in surprise, "You two live here? My name is Qin Fen, I heard your name is Lin Rui, right?" He smiled and stretched out his hand. "Well." Lin Rui nodded, did not shake his hand, and said nothing. He didn't have any bad feelings for this man, but he didn't have any good feelings for him either. He was just here for a job, not to make friends. The base is very quiet, often as quiet as a tomb. Except at certain times, there will be rushing sirens. At this time, all personnel must be fully assembled. Lin Rui originally thought that this was the same as in the army, an emergency gathering anytime and anywhere. But after a few times, he discovered that this was actually a regular pattern. Every day at the same time, there will be such an emergency gathering. Zhao Jianfei's explanation is that every day during this time period, there will be satellites passing over the sky. The best way to avoid detection of this camp is to get everyone together and avoid exposure. Lin Rui guessed right, this is a former Soviet military base. With the disintegration of that huge country, it has long been forgotten and has become a paradise for mercenaries. Today, with Zhao Jianfei, there are two other people. A black man, and an Asian man. Both of them were wearing heavy snow camouflage, and their military boots were damp, as if they had just arrived at the base not long ago. Lin Rui's heart moved slightly. Could this be the other two instructors in the training camp? Zhao Jianfei made a gesture and said, "All stand up, let's meet your other two instructors. This is Quinton, he is responsible for teaching you camouflage reconnaissance and covered operations, and he is also the best blaster." Zhao Jianfei pointed the somewhat gloomy black man said, "He will also teach you how to survive on the battlefield." In the 1994 Rwanda genocide, nearly 1 million people were killed. And he was only 18 years old, but he was alone in that on earth. Survived for more than 2 full months. There is no supply, no backup, or even hope. The black man behind Zhao Jianfei looked calm, as strong as a rock. Zhao Jianfei turned to another Asian man and said to everyone, "This is Tang Kun. A professional military doctor, and an expert in dangerous long-range sniping, but if you want to play close combat with him, you will be courting death. Because although he is a terrible sniper, but it's the unarmed combat that really made him famous. He once reigned supreme in the underground fighting arena, terrifying the most dangerous thugs. The smartest thing to do with this kind of guy is to never mess with him." The faces of all the mercenary students were a little unnatural. It seemed that they were all stunned by the violence emanating from the two of them. Quinton and Tang Kun, even if they just stood there casually, made them feel a little uneasy. Zhao Jianfei looked back at them, shrugged and said, "Please, don't do this, you will frighten these guys. Come on, smile and say hello." The black man nodded silently at the students, as a greeting. Tang Kun was even more direct. He looked at these students and said coldly, "I'm not very good at speaking, because I always like to be more handsome. I promise that in this training camp, you will definitely hate me. Because you are now it's like a bunch of idiots, completely unable to understand that only hard training can give you a better chance of survival." Zhao Jianfei looked at these new mercenaries and said slowly, "Okay, everyone has arrived. From today, everything in this training camp will be on the right track. I must tell you that there are no human rights here, and it doesn't matter. There is no personal space, even a normal schedule. You have to go through exhaustion, pain, hunger, severe cold, all kinds of danger and suffering to complete this Onianda half-year training." This man, who always wore a tired smile and seemed to ignore everything, seemed extremely serious when he said these words. Zhao Jianfei is right, there is no fixed schedule here, apart from training or training, the interval between training is rest. 18 hours a day of training sessions, the other 6 hours include meals, toilet visits, and short sleep. The first lesson was started by Zhao Jianfei, the ordnance training course. Zhao Jianfei took the more than 30 newcomers to a room in the base, and took out 2 rifles and placed them on the table. He looked at everyone and said, I know that almost all of you have service experience and have used weapons. So you will wonder why you need to train in ordnance weapons? Maybe you will think it is a little redundant. But I tell you, this is a course that every mercenary must go through. And the quality of this course will determine your life and death on the battlefield. Zhao Jianfei picked up the 2 rifles and said, the 2 guns I hold now represent 2 military groups in the world. That is, the 2 major organizations of the Warsaw Pact and NATO during the Cold War. These 2 large international military the organization represents 2 branches of military weapons. One of them is the AK series as the most representative former Soviet weapon, and the other represents the American equipment represented by the M series rifle. There are many weapons in the world, but the source of its production has been affected by these 2 military groups. Zhao Jianfei quickly unloaded the rifle's magazine and said indifferently, the weapons are different, and the bullets are not universal. Most of the 5.56 caliber bullets used by NATO member countries are commonly known as NATO bullets, and 7 is only used on general-purpose machine guns. 62 mm bullets. And Soviet weapons, most of them are 7.62 mm bullets. I want you to familiarize yourself with all these guns and bullets. What's your problem? Lin Rui frowned slightly and said, why can't we just use one of them? That's a good question. Zhao Jianfei nodded and said, this is why I teach you about ordnance. Because of the nature of the work of mercenaries, we can't choose an employer. We can fight for any country, so we can't choose weapons. Another reason is that for some reasons, some countries are inconvenient to directly intervene, so they hire us to complete some tasks on their behalf. Of course, some tasks are not visible. The weapons used are often exposed. The identity of the weapon user, for security reasons, we never just use the same weapon. Mixing and matching various weapons not only gives people the feeling that they are not regular weapons, but also helps us choose the best one. Zhao Jianfei said lightly. What you have to do now is to familiarize yourself with the performance of these weapons. Even I want you to be able to imagine every part of each weapon with your eyes closed. For a few hours, all Lin Rui and the others had to do was to keep disassembling and assembling these firearms. Even Zhao Jianfei will come out with some scattered and even rusted weapon parts, so that they can assemble a usable weapon in the shortest time. Lin Rui even felt that he had really become a mechanical assembler. After finishing all this, Zhao Jianfei looked at the weapons they had assembled and pouted, I dismantled them all and disassembled them thoroughly. Mix them together and try again. Lin Rui felt that his head was a bit big. These weapons were of various kinds, including those of the NATO Warsaw Pact. And it seems that there are more old-fashioned M1 Garand semi-automatic rifles and Soviet SVT rifles, these old antiques of World War II. Some weapons are difficult to disassemble. It is not easy to find these parts from the piles of loose parts, and it is even more difficult to assemble them completely. If it wasn't for Zhao Jianfei sending each of them a drawing set with an introduction, Lin Rui would never have thought that this gun was actually an antique used by the Soviet Red Army. There are things that are fully qualified to enter the military museum. God knows where they got it from. After finally finishing all this, they haven't waited for the gun oil on their hands to be cleaned. Tang Kun's physical training has started again, this is an even crazier guy. Everyone followed him around the barren mountains and ridges where the base was located. The low temperature of -40 to 50 degrees in Siberia was enough to freeze people. Lin Rui and others were asked to dress lightly, and only wore very thin clothes to run in the snow. If it was just running, it would be fine. They were also required to carry 30 kilograms and run in the snow. Those who are a little behind will be beaten by Tang Kun. He often carried a thin and long wire in his hand. This thing can't kill people, but it is a deep blood stain on the body. Moreover, this Tang Kun is extremely powerful, and if he has been drawn once, he will never dare to fall behind again. It was only then that Lin Rui realized why they had to run in this severe cold in single clothes. It turned out that it was convenient for him to whip corporal punishment. The strange thing is that no one dared to resist, especially this Tang Kun was the instructor who taught them hand-to-hand combat. Even Qin Fen, who has always liked to talk a lot, was trembling in front of him. So Lin Rui didn't even think it was strange when he saw that this person could burst a sandbag with one punch. As if the man was born to be such a dangerous monster. This Tang Kun doesn't look like a big man, and he's not a muscular man. God knows where he got so much power. Physical fitness, speed, strength. These are the focus of Tang Kun's training. Every time he finished his course, almost someone collapsed to the ground. And those who didn't fall to the ground had to carry these people on their backs and continue to run. After insisting on completing the training, you still have to be punished. Because Morningstar Military Security Company has no habit of abandoning comrades in arms. Tang Kun said coldly. You are not alone, but a team. So if one person fails to complete the training, everyone will be punished. And the training of the Black Quinton made Lin Rui even more frustrated. The team members were asked to hide in the snow and not move for several hours until they were covered with a layer of snow. Quinton used the snow to determine whether they had moved. The snowstorm in Siberia froze almost every one of them. This time someone finally couldn't stand it anymore, jumped out of the snow, slapped the snow on his body angrily, and shouted sharply, "Fuck you, I quit. It's just a job, there is such a tossing person." What? Who do you think you are? Quinton looked at the man coldly, but put his hand on a knife at his waist, looked at the man calmly. What did you just say? His Chinese was very difficult, but his expression was serious. His swarthy face, his eyes and his teeth were astonishingly white. The snow in Siberia is in the form of crystal grains, and it even hurts a little when it falls on people's faces. Quinton, the black man, pulled out the knife around his waist. The shape of the knife was a bit strange, and it looked crude and simple compared to the ordinary finely crafted military knives. Quinton seemed to be saying to himself, this knife has been with me for a long time. It's not a good knife, it's just for harvesting bananas. But this knife has pulled me back from the brink of death countless times. I survived the Holocaust, so it's patience and vigilance beyond this knife. The young man who shouted that he didn't want to do it before, looked at this black man who was as gloomy as a stone, and had already retreated with a bad expression. He seemed to regret the impulse just now, but it was useless to say anything now. Quinton stuck the knife in the snow, and at the same time, his fist slammed into the young man's face. When the young man was beaten up, Quinton suddenly raised his knee and slammed into his abdomen. The young man fell down without humming. The blood on his face splattered on the snow, which was shocking. Quinton stomped his head into the snow and shouted, "Do you know how much a true Tutsi hunter would pay for a prey? I used to chase an antelope with my bare feet, and it ran for 4 or 5 hours in a row under the scorching African sun. By the time I pierced the body of the antelope with a spear, it even stood still because it was exhausted." The person who was trampled in the snow struggled to raise his head, but was trampled on the snow. These mercenary students were all panicked, and Lin Rui even stood up and shouted, "Enough, you will kill him like this." He grabbed Quinton's wrist. Quinton glanced at him, shook off his hand, and said coldly, "Antelope runs very fast, at least much faster than people, but you know why I can catch up with it. Footprints, breath, it has eaten the grass is the reason for it to be chased by me. Do you think I let you lie down in the snow just for fun? I am teaching you how to hide yourself. Learn to be vigilant, learn to be patient, only in this way can you survive. The rules of the battlefield are simple, people on the battlefield have only 2 choices, either to hunt or to be hunted." Quinton raised his feet, turned around and glanced at Lin Rui, and said to him, "You, support him and continue to lie down in the snow. The training time for both of you is doubled. For him, you must train patience. For you, you need to wear off your blood." Reckless and impulsive, many rookie soldiers die every day from these 2 problems. "Then, can we go?" Qin Fen asked tentatively. No. Because this person is your teammate. When teammates are in danger, he is the only one who stands up. Quinton smiled grimly. This shows that all of you lack team awareness, so you all gotta stay. Training time is extended as well. When the training was over, Lin Rui's legs were frozen to the point of unconsciousness, and he walked back to the training base with all his might. He felt that the legs he was moving were almost not his own. The other people around him were no better than him. Lying in the snow in this icy world, everyone's face was blue with freezing. All of you, go to Tang's place and get checked. I don't want anyone to miss the next training because of this. Quinton glanced at these people and said coldly. Tang Kun checked them over and made sure they were all right, so he let the mercenary students go back individually. At this moment, Zhao Jianfei walked in, looked at Quinton and smiled. On the first day of today, how do you feel about them? It's just a bunch of garbage. Quinton said coldly. Not exactly. Tang Kun said slowly, they have all received basic military training and have certain qualities. It's not bad for newcomers to have this. However, that Chinese boy is a bit interesting. He almost fought against me today. Quinton took a breath and said slowly. Zhao Jianfei shrugged and said, they are all Chinese boys. You know these students are all from China. Which one are you talking about? Lin Rui. Sorry, I don't know their names very well, but it should be that one. Quinton glanced at him and said, it is said that he defeated White Bear as soon as he came. That's right, but you're not the first person to be optimistic about him. Zhao Jianfei said slowly, he was recruited by Yunlang himself. Tang Kun was slightly startled. Michelle. Well. You know, it won't be too bad if he can catch his eye. All right, let's rest, tomorrow we have to toss with these junior brothers. Zhao Jianfei smiled and turned and walked out. In the corridor outside, when he passed by Lin Rui, he tapped Lin Rui on the shoulder and said lightly, boy, come here, I have something to tell you. Zhao Jianfei walked in front, and Lin Rui dragged his heavy legs behind him. He wanted to ask Zhao Jianfei what was going on several times, but he held back. The corridor of the underground base is narrow and dim, only illuminated by a dim yellow lamp at the top of the corridor. Zhao Jianfei slowly turned around and said, it is said that you were very heroic today and saved someone from Quinton. I don't think I'm very heroic. Lin Rui said calmly. Actually, you are really not brave enough. If Quinton wants to kill that student, you can't stop it. Zhao Jianfei sneered, he just wants to establish authority, he only wants your simplest obedience, and that person chose confrontation. Do you think that's wise? It's not wise, but it doesn't deserve to die. Lin Rui looked at Zhao Jianfei and said. Shit or not, let's leave it alone. Zhao Jianfei said with a slight smile, do you know why the Morning Star Company spent so much to train you all? Don't you mean to cooperate with the military of various countries to carry out military missions? Lin Rui frowned. Zhao Jianfei nodded, yes, nominally, I have contacts with the military of many countries. We assist them in military training, base services, logistics supply and other peripheral work, and are not responsible for direct participation in the war. It sounds like no, what is strange, many countries are like this. But in fact, I can give you a set of data. During the Iraq War, the number of killed employees of various military and security companies combined for the first time exceeded 10,000, which has exceeded the number of regular troops killed. You know why? Because we're doing so much more than just peripheral work, we're doing the most dangerous frontline missions. Lin Rui raised his head and said, what do you want to say? What I'm saying is, learn to be smart. We call you, train you, invest in you, don't want to lose everything because of one bullet on the battlefield. So everyone here has to learn to survive on the battlefield. And Quinton is trying to teach you this. Zhao Jianfei looked at Lin Rui and said slowly, tell me, do you want to go back alive? I think. Lin Rui looked at him and said. Then study hard, don't make trouble again. Zhao Jianfei said indifferently, going out of this training camp smoothly, your chances of surviving on the battlefield can increase by at least 10%. You are a smart person, this is a very great deal, don't screw it up. Lin Rui looked at him and said solemnly, why did you tell me this? Because someone admires you very much, and he has never looked at it. Whether it is me, Quinton, or Tang Kun, this person has always valued you. And we have all gone through a hail of bullets and completed many highly dangerous tasks. And survived smoothly. Zhao Jianfei said coldly. Go back to your room now and have a good rest. There will be training arrangements for tomorrow. Lin Rui hesitated for a while, then nodded, thank you. Dragging his heavy legs, Lin Rui returned to the room. After sitting down, he almost didn't want to get up. At this moment, someone pushed him and whispered, thank you for today's matter. If it wasn't for you, I might have been beaten to death by that guy. Lin Rui raised his head and looked at him, only to realize that this person was the young man who was beaten by Quinton today. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Lin Rui didn't say anything, just sat quietly. Okay, don't bother him, he doesn't like talking very much. Qin Fen came over and said. I said, the two of you are really able to toss today. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be able to suffer this crime. By the way, brother, what's your name? Jin Hushan, how about you? The young man asked. My name is Qin Fen, and his name is Lin Rui. Qin Fen whispered, I can see it, it's better to keep a low profile here. These people are all outlaws, and it's light to beat you today. This mountain is so high and the emperor is far away, even if they pull you out and kill you, you have nowhere to complain. Jin Hushan was stunned and said, isn't that true? Isn't it? Qin Fen sneered, you haven't noticed how strict the security measures are here. Those people at the door are all armed with live ammunition. To them, killing someone is nothing at all. What kind of military security company? To put it bluntly, it is mercenary company. You still expect to reason with them? Stop dreaming. But we all have a contract. I'm not going to work at the head office, right? Jin Hushan said a little unwillingly. Do you think this is a vegetable market? If you want to quit, you can quit. Qin Fen frowned and whispered, I heard that as soon as we go abroad, the company will find a way to eliminate our presence in the country. Identity. Even if you want to go back now, you can't go back. Train obediently, and work for them obediently. Maybe there is still a chance. If you want to quit now, can the company let you go? Lin Rui got up annoyed, he really didn't want to listen to this anymore. Although he knew that what Qin Fen said was the actual situation. Jin Hushan hesitated for a while, looked around, and said in a low voice, it really doesn't work, let's find a way to escape. Escape? Qin Fen's expression changed, and he lowered his voice, you're dying? Do you think their security measures here are just a joke? Lin Rui's heart also suddenly tightened, and he turned to look at Jin Hushan. I have observed that this is an old-fashioned Soviet military base, mainly built in the mountainside. Although the people at the gate are difficult to deal with, we can avoid the gate. Jin Hushan said in a low voice, I also have a friend. He is an engineer, and he and I have calculated that there is a weak spot in the room here. If we can get explosives, we may be able to blow up a way. Qin Fen's expression changed and he whispered, are you sure? You can't go wrong, he is an expert in directional blasting. I have measured the approximate distance with him with my steps. There is a place here. Apart from the reinforced concrete of 80 centimeters, there is only more than 1 meter of rock formation. If we have enough explosives, it is completely possible to escape from here. And that place is not at the gate, so you can avoid those guards. Jin Hushan whispered. Lin Rui suddenly grabbed him and shouted in a low voice, you'd better not have this thought. Even if you get the explosives and blow a road, how far do you think you can run out? Are they all vegetarians? It's freezing and snowing outside, and the temperature is -40 to 50 degrees. How far do you think you can run? At that time, you will not only kill yourself, but also hurt others. Jin Hushan turned pale and said, I'm just talking. I can't say, I can't even think. In this place, any wrong idea is enough to kill you. Lin Rui whispered, who do you think they are? They can use the former Soviet military base as a training camp. All kinds of weapons and equipment, and have these high-quality military guards outside. This is not something that ordinary companies can do. You are willing to sign the contract. If you choose to go back now, then there is only a dead end. Qin Fen's face was a little unnatural. He whispered, actually, I have long thought of it. It is said that the training of mercenaries is very cruel. You say, if we fail the training, will we? He didn't go on. But Lin Rui and Jin Hushan knew what he meant. Lin Rui shook his head and said, this is not clear, but I think we are all recruited by them after they have selected them. Most of the military qualities are good, so there should be no such situation as you said. Don't have any dangerous thoughts. Jin Hushan and Qin Fen stopped talking, they were silent for a long time. Qin Fen couldn't help it anymore. He asked Lin Rui, brother, what should we do now? Sleep. Lin Rui glanced at him and said, we have 6 hours to rest. If you don't want to drag your tired body to cope with the next training, it's best to get enough rest. This mercenary training has just begun. There will be guilt in the future. After saying this, he lay on the bed and tried to calm himself down, and fell asleep for a while. Lin Rui was right. Soon it was training time again. The short rest period was desperately short. After barely sleeping for a few hours, they were gathered again and taken to the training hall in the base. This time, Zhao Jianfei was still teaching them, and what he taught was weapon knowledge. He was still busy decomposing and combining various weapons, and then Zhao Jianfei explained the characteristics and technical data of each weapon. No one dared to say one more word, because they all knew that there was only order and obedience here. Zhao Jianfei's training is very simple. Anyone who can quickly sort and assemble firearms from a pile of weapon parts and complete the firing of live ammunition within the time specified by him can rest. Otherwise, repeat the practice. Like most of the students, Lin Rui failed to meet Zhao Jianfei's requirements, so he continued to practice in groups. Qin Fen couldn't help but said, Instructor Zhao, is your standard a bit too high? There are at least dozens of different types of firearms in this pile of parts. The parts must be sorted and assembled successfully within 2 minutes. Still have to complete live ammunition. Weapons are the life of a soldier, and being unfamiliar with weapons means ignoring one's own life. Zhao Jianfei walked over to him coldly, completed the assembly of the firearm with great speed, and quickly shot at the shooting target behind him. Then slowly said, this is just the beginning, I ask you to do more than that. When the weapons are started, you must familiarize yourself with the performance in the shortest possible time. Because every gun, no matter how unified the production, their shooting performance, it will not be an absolute standard. When shooting, the accuracy will be shifted. This is the most test of the gunner. Zhao Jianfei said indifferently, a real good gunslinger can complete the debugging of the firearm after firing 1 or 2 bullets, and know how to correct the ballistics by relying on his own feel. This is by no means an easy thing, and what you have to do now, it's just the basics. Lin Rui frowned, feel. Yes, it's the feel. Zhao Jianfei slowly picked up a bullet from the side and looked at everyone, speaking of the feel, this is a standard bullet. M1943S 7.62 x 39 mm Warsaw packed bullet, loaded with the amount of charge is 1.6 grams. The length of the full bullet is 56 mm. The length of the warhead is 26.8 mm, the length of the shell is 38.7 mm, and the weight of the warhead is 7.91 grams. The initial velocity is 710 meters per second. The mass of the full bullet is 16.4 grams. A good gunslinger can feel the subtle differences between these dozen grams of firearms by the feel of the hand. Zhao Jianfei withdrew the magazine and threw it to Lin Rui, then blindfolded himself with a cloth tape, and said calmly, "Load the bullets as many times as you want. I can demonstrate it to all of you, even if I don't watch you. The number of bullets. You can tell what kind of gun this is, and even how many bullets there are in the gun." Everyone was a little surprised. They are all veterans and are no strangers to firearms. They all know that it is impossible to achieve the feel that Zhao Jianfei said. However, they still witnessed the impossible. Zhao Jianfei tied his eyes with a cloth tape, and did not look at the number of bullets in the magazine of any gun, but as soon as the gun landed in his hand, he could immediately report what type of firearm it was, and even there are several bullets in the magazine. It's like he also has a pair of eyes on his hands. Lin Rui really took it this time. Zhao Jianfei's move seems like a joke, but it contains too many things. It's not that you are extremely familiar with these weapons, it is simply impossible to do this. Only then did Lin Rui think of the calluses on Zhao Jianfei's hands that were playing with guns. I don't know how much time it took to practice. The last time, Qin Fen put a gun in Zhao Jianfei's hand. Zhao Jianfei said indifferently, "This gun is FAMAS, the world's first bullpup assault-type small-caliber rifle, made in France." He suddenly tore off his blindfold, raised the gun at Qin Fen, and smiled slightly. "Do you want to believe I'm going to shoot?" Everyone was stunned, not knowing why Zhao Jianfei suddenly attacked. They all stared blankly at him raising a gun to Qin Fen's forehead. Qin Fen's face turned pale. "Instructor Zhao, don't be joking." Zhao Jianfei said lightly, "You are joking with me, because there is no bullet in this gun, not a single one." He decisively pulled the trigger on Qin Fen's forehead. Crack! The sound of the gun was a little crisp, but there was no bullet in the gun. Zhao Jianfei said indifferently, "You know what this is? This is self-confidence. If a gunman lacks self-confidence in his opponent's guns, what else can he rely on? Your seemingly boring gun decomposition exercises to allow you to build this kind of full of self-confidence. If you understand everything, then keep practicing." Qin Fen's face turned pale. He forced a smile and said, "Instructor Zhao, it's really amazing. I don't need the praise of a pig's head." Zhao Jianfei waved his hand and said, "Practice well. When will you be able to meet my requirements? When will you be able to get rid of this boring practice and enter the next stage? From an ordinary veteran to a true small arms specialist, you still have a long way to go." Lin Rui silently took the gun in Zhao Jianfei's hand, disassembled it as quickly as possible, and then assembled it again. The rest of the mercenary students also bowed their heads. These veterans who used to be the top military trainers in the army, Yu reading www.yuuganshu.com was completely convinced in front of the real experts this time. For the next few days, Lin Rui almost spent his time in the pile of scrap iron in the training camp. He believes that what Zhao Jianfei can do, he can do the same. He had always been proud that he had never been behind anyone when it came to military training. But Zhao Jianfei let him know that there is no strongest in this world, only stronger. During more than 10 consecutive days of arduous training, Lin Rui's hands were almost rubbed off. But his knowledge of various weapons has also been exercised invisibly. In the end, he was one of the first students to reach Zhao Jianfei's standard. He has been able to accurately assemble each firearm from a pile of parts, and compress the process to less than a minute. This was an unbelievable speed even before. At the same time, Lin Rui did not fall behind in Quinton's lurking and survival training. He can now lie still in the snow for a full hour. Even alone fell unsuspectingly on his snow-covered head while he lurked. His whole person is like a stubborn rock in the Siberian ice and snow, except that his eyes are still bright like stars. In contrast, Tang Kun's training is more difficult than the first two, so the students not only have to undergo combat training, but also undergo human anatomy training. In his words, mastering human anatomy is necessary to learn the skills of killing people quickly on the battlefield. Only by deeply understanding which parts of the human body are weakest can we train truly efficient military combat skills. The cadavers used for the autopsy were all shipped from outside, with the label of the Novosibirsk Medical University. Tang Kun will personally guide them to familiarize themselves with every part of the human body. Facing the corpses, sometimes Lin Rui felt that he was as cold as these corpses. 36 mercenary students, including Lin Rui, have grown up under this difficult and cruel training. They get up at 4:30 every morning, start long-distance running at 6 o'clock, or climb mountains, and they must bear weight, at least 30 times. Kilogram. They had to climb a 5-story brick wall in half a minute without using auxiliary equipment, swim 5 kilometers in 80 minutes with full armor, jump 10 kilometers with equipment, and carry 3.5 kilometers on snow-covered mountain roads. Rapid marching, in addition to sit-ups, push-ups, single parallel bars, barbells, bombs, and other subjects, as well as mine-laying, EOD, underwater penetration assault, diving and other subjects. Diving in the icy lakes of Siberia has never been an easy task. Almost every few days someone goes into shock underwater and is dragged back to base like a dead dog. Tang Kun is very simple about these methods, that is, wine. A Russian shako with enough alcohol to burn, let them drink it, massage the limbs, and continue to exercise until the blood flow through the body completely eliminates the chill. Lin Rui himself had suffered such treatment twice. All the trainees no longer use the base to call this training camp, the ice hell. This is a phrase they often talk about. The underground training camp in Siberia lasted for more than 4 months until the spring of the following year under this gloomy and cold smell of death and gun lubricant. On this day, according to the usual practice, the buzzer alarm of the underground base sounded, and the mercenary students got up in a conditioned reflex and quickly ran to the training hall of the base to gather. Strangely, this time it wasn't Zhao Jianfei or Quinton and Tang Kun who called them together. After they formed a queue, a handsome middle-aged man walked over. He did not wear military uniforms like Zhao Jianfei and others, but a suit and leather shoes, which seemed very out of place in this underground military base. Lin Rui recognized at a glance that this person was the Mr. Mi who recruited him at that time. Mr. Mi didn't seem to have changed at all, still his handsome and somewhat rigid face. He stood there calmly, watching these mercenary students quietly. The 3 instructors, including Zhao Jianfei, were standing behind him. Quinton, a black man who had always been ruthless, had a humble and respectful attitude towards Mr. Mi. Mr. Mi looked at all the students with a slight smile and said, "I think some of you should know me, but some don't. Then let me introduce myself, my name is Michelle, of course it's just a pseudonym. Usually I would like you to call me Mr. Mi. You were all selected by me to enter the company, and it has been proven that I am not wrong. During the 4 months of training, none of you have been eliminated. I am very happy about this." Lin Rui quietly looked at the middle-aged man who looked a little thin. Although he didn't know the true identity of this person, from the attitude of Zhao Jianfei and others, this person should be a senior executive of Morningstar Military Security Company. "I just don't know how this Mr. Mi came here all of a sudden." Mr. Mi said calmly, "The training in the past few months has fully proved your plasticity, and you can be trained into real elite soldiers. But war is never done by one person, no matter how strong a single soldier is. It is only one person. Next, the 36 of you will be organized into 6 teams of 6. Complete the next training. What you need to learn is the ability to fight together. Jianfei, tell them." Zhao Jianfei nodded and walked forward. "In view of Morningstar's mercenary mission, Metropolis will complete it in a team mode. We will make reasonable arrangements according to your own characteristics to form these 6 teams. There is no specific division of labor within the team. That is to say, each of you must master all the skills required by the entire team. Because you will be selected for highly dangerous missions. Someone will die at any time. I don't want the death of one person to affect the entire team's operations. Efficiency. Mr. Me waved calmly, okay, you can group them. He turned to look at Quinton and Tang Kun, you two, come with me. Zhao Jianfei looked at the mercenary students and said solemnly, let's start grouping according to the name I clicked on. Mr. Me took Quinton and Tang Kun directly to the combat conference room at the back of the base. He looked a little serious, looked at Quinton and Tang Kun and said, how is their training these past few months? Quinton said solemnly, from their personal training data, they are not bad, and they can basically meet the general standards of combat personnel. He handed an electronic notepad to Mr. Me. Mr. Me took it, but instead of looking at it, he put the electronic notepad on the table. He said indifferently, you know I don't care about these superficial data. I want you to tell me the truth, are they ready? Quinton hesitated, they are still newcomers after all. Mr. Me nodded calmly and said, that is to say, they are not good enough. For now, their training results are really good. Tang Kun said solemnly, however, the mercenaries have never been on the battlefield and have never seen blood. They can't be considered ready. Mr. Me, are you? Have something to say? Mr. Me nodded, the competition in the international mercenary market is very fierce, the mercenary business is not very good, and the company's top management is under pressure now. But don't worry, I, Silver Wolf Michelle, will bear all the pressure for everyone. Mr. Me, what do you mean? Quinton glanced at Mr. Me with some hesitation. Several directors of the company have been discussing whether we should train the personnel ourselves. Mr. Me glanced at them and said, some people mean that it is better to hire experienced mercenaries directly than the current model. This makes it easier for them to get into the situation and get to work quickly. Directly hire experienced mercenaries. Tang Kun frowned, this price is not cheap. Moreover, these old battlefield fritters are not ambiguous in combat, but it is difficult to guarantee their reliability. At present, our method is a little troublesome. But we cultivate our own people. I think so too. You know that the biggest reason why we can stand in the company is because most of the mercenaries are our people. This situation has aroused the vigilance of the company's top management. So their proposal is not complete. It is a matter of fact, but a use of the topic, in order to weaken our influence in the company. How could this be? Tang Kun frowned. The workplace is like a battlefield. I've said before that the company is another battlefield. Mr. Me smiled lightly, this kind of thing is inevitable. It's just that I didn't expect that they would bring up these things so quickly. You should know, it is precisely because those of us who came from mercenaries occupy a place in the company. They will value our strength. The interests of all mercenary brothers will be guaranteed. Yes, we all know this. So, the company is planning to attack you. Quinton whispered. Are they trying to remove the influence of those of us in the company? Humph, that's not the case. After all, the Morning Star Company is today, and most of it was shot down by me, the Silver Wolf Michelle. The directors of the company have not dared to challenge me publicly. But you know, I am alone. My ability is limited. And I am a new member of the board of directors. If I want to convince the public, I must show my strength. Mr. Me said calmly, I want to let those directors with fat brains know that I am everything to Morningstar. A stern look flashed in Tang Kun's eyes, Mr. Me, speak up. Who do you want to get rid of? If you want you to speak out, I can make him disappear from now on. Mr. Me smiled slightly, there's no need for this. The battlefield is the battlefield, and the workplace is the workplace. The principles are the same, but the rules are different. It is understandable for businessmen to seek profit. What you can help me is to train these young people. Like I trained you the same way back then. Don't worry, Sir. I can't guarantee anything else. But after the Onyanda half-year training period, I will show you a group of real elite warriors. Tang Kun said solemnly, it is even better and more efficient than us. Mr. Mi sighed slightly and said, I believe in their potential, and even more in your abilities, but the board of directors can't wait so long. They want to see results in the short term, so the training period may be reduced to 6 months. Half a year. Quinton's expression changed, are you in a hurry? Yeah, this is a problem that the board of directors of the company throws us. They only gave half a year, and now 4 months have passed. In other words, after 2 months, these young people will have a real test. In fact, the company has arranged an actual combat confrontation to test the combatants we have trained. If it is successful, I will really stand on the board. So what if it fails? Quinton looked at Mr. Mi. That means that those of us who came from mercenaries will gradually move away from the core of the management. There will no longer be people we cultivated ourselves, and instead we will hire experienced and mature mercenaries. This is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that the fading out of those of us will completely control the Morning Star Company in the hands of those mercenary businessmen, and it will be difficult to protect the interests of the bottom mercenaries. Mr. Mi frowned slightly. Tang Kun's expression changed slightly, and he said solemnly, since it's an actual battle, who is the opponent? Some free mercenaries, mainly Israelis. Mr. Mi said indifferently, Gross, Zhao Jianfei's old rival. It's him. Blue veins appeared on Tang Kun's forehead, and he said angrily, is this the company's arrangement? Let a group of newcomers who have only trained for 6 months fight against the veteran mercenary leader like Gross. Ross has the blood of many of our brothers on his hands, and he is a bloodthirsty beast. Yes, he is a beast. But at the same time, his mercenary team has always been one of the best in the entire industry. In the eyes of the company's executives, this has nothing to do with personal grudges, just business. Even if the person he killed is me, as long as it is profitable, the company will still choose to cooperate with him. This is business. Mr. Mi said lightly. Does Zhao Jianfei know about this? Tang Kun hesitated. The reason why I'm talking to you is because I don't want him to know. Mr. Mi said calmly, since his brother died, I've known that the relationship between him and Gross is difficult. You still have 2 months. Come train this team. Win or lose, don't let me down. Since Michelle's appearance, the atmosphere in the training camp has become more tense. Quinton is more indifferent and gloomy, while Tang Kun is more violent. The training time remained the same, but the training intensity was increased again, and these instructors added fists and feet when they were slightly unsatisfactory during the training. It made Lin Rui, the mercenary students, miserable. During the interval between training, Lin Rui leaned against the thick wall of the base and panted. At this time, Qin Fen gently pushed him and said in a low voice, "What's going on these days? Lao He and Madman Tang are just like chicken blood, endless tossing." Lin Rui shook his head and did not speak, although he also noticed that the atmosphere of the training camp was a little unusual these days. Jin Hushan lowered his voice and said, "Have you heard? It is said that our training time has been shortened. The entire 1.5-year training plan is required to be completed within half a year, and I heard that we will be on the battlefield in 2 months. Good or bad luck, brother?" Qin Fen said with a wry smile, "I think it's more fortunate and less fortunate." Jin Hushan leaned over and lowered his voice, "I heard that in 2 months, we will have an assessment. This is not an exercise, but an actual combat confrontation with real guns and live ammunition. The bullets won't have eyes at that time." Lin Rui frowned, "Who did you listen to? Who else is there, that cook named White Bear? This guy hides behind and drinks every day, and when he gets drunk, he throws up everything. Finally, I haven't learned Russian for the past few months, so I probably got a few words out of him." Jin Hushan whispered, "This is taking our lives as cannon fodder." How about it? Have you considered my previous proposal? What proposal? Lin Rui said calmly. Escape. Jin Hushan's eyes flickered. I have already observed that the guards' changing time is regular. They go outside to complete the handover, at least 2 minutes. Enough for me to sneak into the arsenal. Got the explosives. In 2 minutes, you have to open the door to the underground arsenal, fix the alarm, and find the explosives, and you have to get it out. You think you can do it? Old Mazi's stuff is stupid and sturdy enough. This old-fashioned the strength of the reinforced concrete structure of the Soviet-Russian base is beyond your imagination. Lin Rui looked at Jin Hushan and said, and there is no C4 explosive in this base. With the nitro explosives used for training, how much do you think is enough to blow up a road? Come. Jin Hushan was stunned, he looked at Lin Rui blankly. But Lin Rui didn't finish his sentence. He pointed to the outside and said lightly, in this corridor outside, there are a total of 14 hidden surveillance cameras, which can truly monitor without dead ends. And I'm sure that the security of Morningstar Company personnel are constantly staring at these surveillance footage, predicting and assessing potential dangers. You and your companion are already on their radar. Jin Hushan was taken aback and said in a low voice, it's impossible. We have never found any surveillance cameras. We walked that road several times in secret, and nothing happened. Lin Rui smiled coldly and said, you didn't notice this. Because those cameras are not installed on the top as usual, but are installed under the corner of the wall to monitor everyone coming and going from an upward angle. This method is not only hidden, and there is no monitoring of dead ends. So you don't even want to use the usual methods to avoid it. The reason why you and your companions are fine is because you have not yet had any substantial actions. If you really try to open the arsenal, you will be killed. But why are they monitoring us? Qin Fen couldn't help asking. Do you think they should trust us? Lin Rui asked back, if you don't believe me, you can try to escape with him. But I still say that, although a mercenary career is dangerous, you won't die if you don't die. The buzzer alarm outside sounded again, and Zhao Jianfei's voice roared again, all gathering. Hurry up, and hurry up. Don't force me to kick your ass. Damn it, it started again. It's only been a few minutes of rest, is this old Zhao trying to kill us? Qin Fen couldn't help laughing and crying. Lin Rui patted him and said in a low voice, let's go, stay alert and keep a low profile. The 36 mercenary students gathered again at the underground training ground. Zhao Jianfei said coldly, I found that some of you are reluctant to rest well between training sessions, and prefer to wander around the base. Since you are so energetic if there is too much, then let's continue to do some exciting training. Haven't you been divided into groups of 6? That's good, train in groups in batches. The content of training is tactical movements. Lin Rui and the others were relieved at this time. What they are most afraid of now is not tactical movement training, but physical training that really tortures people. Tactical training is just a matter of crawling and rolling, but internal training is to drain the last bit of strength in their bodies, and they will not stop until they are exhausted. Therefore, when Zhao Jianfei said that the subject of training was tactical movements, almost everyone felt a bit of relief. But their happiness soon turned to depression. Zhao Jianfei dragged a gun and said indifferently, the main purpose of training tactical movements is to let you learn to use terrain and all other available shelters and cover to improve your chances of survival on the battlefield. So let's be honest. The so-called tactical action is your ability to escape under fire. Since this is the case, there is no pressure on you without fire. He raised the automatic rifle in his hand and said mockingly, the fire suppression of my gun is indeed a little weak, but it doesn't matter, it's just the initial stage. Then start with the least, and you line up. Teams take turns passing through this obstacle course, I don't care which way you go. Just avoid my shots and pass quickly and you're done training. Otherwise, another round. He lowered his head to check the firearm and the magazine, and then pulled the trigger with a click. Lin Rui's heart tightened immediately. Does he want to use live ammunition to test the student's tactical movements? This is too much, isn't it? Could it be that just because one action is not in place, will he be shot? And the opponent is a shooter like Zhao Jianfei, his marksmanship has always been frightening. Sure enough, as expected, a mercenary student was thrown down by Zhao Jianfei with a single shot. A precise burst, the gunshot is somewhat dull. The mercenary student was knocked down almost as soon as he started, and he was writhing in pain after falling to the ground. Don't be nervous, it's just rubber bullets. Zhao Jianfei said indifferently, the enemy on the battlefield will not be more merciful than me. By the way, when you start, not only is your movement slow, but your posture is too high. The fish leaped in, and then relying on the obstacle on one side and crawling low, you can avoid this shot of mine. With your performance just now, I can not only blow your head off with one shot, but even have time to make another shot to shoot your head off. Second child. Rubber bullets are also called anti-riot bullets, which are mainly used for anti-riot and dispersal. The warhead is made of rubber with a certain hardness and has a buffering effect. When the ammunition is fired at close range, it only damages the surface of the target without penetrating the target itself, so the lethality is small, but the accuracy is relatively high. Although this kind of bullet is not fatal, the consequences of being hit in the body by a shot are definitely not fun. The impact force generated by the bullet, acting on the human body, is enough to make the body bruised and inexplicably painful. Zhao Jianfei said with an expressionless face, the next one will follow. Another mercenary student came to the ground timidly. They already had a psychological shadow on Zhao Jianfei's marksmanship. As soon as he saw him raising his gun, the student immediately fell to the ground, leaning against a hidden spot, and refused to come out for a long time. Zhao Jianfei was not in a hurry, with a cigarette in his mouth. Just waiting there for a full minute, the student couldn't help sticking his head out to check the situation. Zhao Jianfei almost didn't even look at it, just raised his hand and shot. The rubber bullet was shot directly on the helmet of the mercenary student. The student sat on the ground with his on his back, holding his head in his hands, and it took a long time to recover. 7. Even if the 62 mm rubber bullet hit the helmet, it shocked him hard. 1 by 1 is a bit too slow. You all pass together as a team. Zhao Jianfei seemed to be dissatisfied with the training efficiency. No wonder, Zhao Jianfei alone and a gun were enough to block this 50 meter tactical training runway. And this tactical training track has some large shelters at the beginning, and the shelters become less and less, and the last 10 meters or so is almost an open space. In other words, if you want to pass the last 10 meters, you are completely exposed to his muzzle. Let the students pass one by one, and there is little chance of not being shot down by him. Even in the squad mode, these students couldn't hold out for 10 seconds before someone was hit, and the rest were hiding under a cover and shivering. Come on, get up and continue. Zhao Jianfei scolded with a smile, did you learn your previous tactical moves from your sister-in-law? Why do I look at you a little bit awkward? Come out like a man and take a shot from me, or like a man. She pouted her behind cover like a woman. Those students were not stupid either. Relying on the shelter around them, they gestured and winked. Their plan is very simple. As long as the time is agreed, a few people will run away together. They didn't believe that Zhao Jianfei's marksmanship would be so fast, someone might be hit, but this moment was enough for the others to advance to the next cover. That is, they intend to trade one person's sacrifice for the advancement of another. However, they were still slow. Although several people rushed out together, Zhao Jianfei's marksmanship was not slow at all. Almost 2 shots were fired in a row, and 2 of the students were hit and fell to the ground. A 6-person team had already lost more than half of their casualties after only running a distance of less than 10 meters. The remaining 3 were hit by Zhao Jianfei in the next 2 minutes. The entire squad was wiped out. Zhao Jianfei still stood there with an indifferent expression. The cigarette at the corner of his mouth was not half burned. Next group, continue.